Tonight, the mother of one of Elon Musk's children is speaking out.
Saint Clair announced in February 2025 that she had given birth to her and Musk's son the previous September. The SpaceX founder has fathered 14 known children with 4 women, including Saint Clair.
Ashley Saint Clair finally admits what everyone suspected about Elon Musk. For a long time, the world only got to see one version of Ashley Saint Clair. She was a sharp-tongued conservative commentator with a growing audience, the children's book author, the college campus speaker who built her reputation on cultural commentary and political provocation. She had more than 1 million followers on X, regular appearances on Fox News, and a carefully maintained public image that fit neatly inside the conservative media world she occupied. But behind all of that, something else was quietly unfolding. Something that would eventually pull back the curtain on a side of Elon Musk that very few people had ever been allowed to describe in their own words. It started, as so many things in that world do, with a post going viral. In the spring of 2023, Musk began engaging with Saint Clair's content on X, the platform he had purchased and made his personal megaphone. According to what Saint Clair later told the New York Post, those online interactions quickly turned into direct messages, then an invitation to visit X headquarters in San Francisco when she happened to be in the city for work. From there, the relationship developed at speed. There were private jet trips and travel together. Saint Clair alleged the pair entered a romantic relationship in May 2023, and that a child was conceived in January 2024 during a trip to St. Bart's. She stated she was not with any other man during the time of conception. By the following September, she had given birth to a son she initially kept entirely out of the public eye. What happened next revealed something important about how Elon Musk's private world actually operates. According to Saint Clair's detailed account to the Wall Street Journal, in April 2025, after the birth of their son, Musk's wealth manager Jared Burkle contacted her with a specific request: keep Musk's name off the birth certificate for security reasons. She agreed to that. What she did not agree to was a second conversation that followed, in which Burkle outlined a formal financial arrangement that he described as one other mothers of Musk's children had already accepted. The offer, as Saint Clair described it, was $15 million up front, plus $100,000 per month, in exchange for signing a comprehensive secrecy agreement and staying permanently silent about the child's existence and parentage. Burkle reportedly told her that taking the legal route instead would not end well for her, and that the other women in similar situations had chosen the quieter path. Saint Clair turned the offer down. She said she did not want her son to grow up feeling like a hidden person, unknown and unacknowledged. She also shared something Musk had allegedly said to her directly during their time together that, once it became public, stopped a lot of people in their tracks. Court documents included messages allegedly from Musk that read, "I want to knock you up again," and separately, "Well, we do have a legion of kids to make." These messages were submitted as part of the paternity petition she filed in New York Supreme Court. They painted a portrait of someone with a very specific and unsettling vision for how many children he intended to have and with whom, a vision that Saint Clair said included talk of using surrogates and building what he called a legion before some future catastrophic scenario. Whether one views those statements as grandiose ambition or something darker, they were not the kind of private communication most people expected to see surface in a courtroom filing. In February 2025, Saint Clair announced the birth on X, citing concerns over media intrusion as a reason for her prior silence. She had received word that tabloid outlets were preparing to publish the story regardless of her wishes, and she made the decision to get ahead of it herself on her own platform, in her own words. The announcement landed on Valentine's Day 2025, and the reaction was immediate and intense across the internet. Musk's public response on X was a single word: whoa. He also chose to engage with an old post from 2020, in which Saint Clair had jokingly written about wanting his attention for a marriage proposal, which many observers found to be a strikingly cold and deflecting response given the weight of what she had just revealed. Saint Clair replied directly, noting that she and her team had been trying to reach him for several days with no response, and that the account he chose to engage with had posted photographs of her taken when she was 15 years old. That detail alone told its own disturbing story about the environment surrounding this entire situation. Saint Clair filed 2 petitions in Manhattan Supreme Court the following week, one seeking to officially establish Musk as the father of her child, and another seeking sole custody of her 5-month-old son. She claimed in those filings that Musk was not present at their son's birth and had met the child only 3 times, with no meaningful involvement in his care or upbringing. She wrote that she had been the one scheduling and attending all of his medical appointments, feeding him, bathing him, and ensuring all of his physical and emotional needs were met, describing herself as the only parent the child had ever truly known. The 3 visits Musk had made to the child totaled less than 4 hours, according to the custody petition. A first visit in New York City in September 2024 where he spent 2 hours, a follow-up visit the next day for 1 hour, and a 30-minute stop in Austin, Texas in late November 2024, after which he had not seen the child again before the legal battle began. The sheer contrast between the scale of Musk's public life and the minimal time he had spent with this particular child was something that resonated deeply with people following the story. A paternity test conducted by LabCorp ultimately confirmed a 99.9999% probability of Musk's paternity. What had begun as a Valentine's Day announcement that Musk responded to with one dismissive word was now legally confirmed beyond any scientific doubt. The child's name, previously referred to in court documents only by initials, was eventually publicly confirmed as Romulus, a name that fit the pattern of unusual names Musk had given children across his other relationships, and a name that Saint Clair said Musk himself had chosen before the legal dispute began. The financial fallout from Saint Clair's decision to pursue legal action rather than accept a private settlement became one of the more publicly visible and discussed dimensions of the entire story. According to her legal team, Musk financially retaliated against his son after she filed the custody petition with the New York Supreme Court. Saint Clair claimed Musk reduced her child support by 60% and said she was forced to sell a Tesla Model S to manage the resulting financial pressure. Musk disputed this, stating it already provided $2.5 million along with $500,000 annually while the paternity question was still being resolved, and denied any financial retaliation. The public image of a woman with over 1 million social media followers selling her car outside her Manhattan apartment because the world's wealthiest man had allegedly cut payments to their shared child was a moment that resonated far beyond the gossip cycle. It raised a much larger question about the power imbalance involved when someone with virtually unlimited financial and legal resources is on the opposing side of your custody case. Saint Clair later launched a podcast called Bad Advice, which she credited with helping her avoid eviction. She described the overall experience in 2025 as an unplanned professional setback and acknowledged it had left a gap in her career history. She could not publicly explain, due to the sealed nature of court proceedings, words that spoke to just how much the fight had cost her beyond the financial dimension. Then came a legal development that brought an entirely new layer of disturbing complexity to the story. Saint Clair alleged that on or about January 4th, 2025, she discovered a post on X from Grok, xAI's AI chatbot, featuring an altered image of her placed in a black string bikini alongside 2 friends, generated after a user submitted a crude prompt requesting the tool do exactly that. When she raised the issue publicly and made clear she had not consented to having her image altered or manipulated in any way, Grok reportedly confirmed that her images would not be used or altered without explicit consent in future responses. That promise, according to her lawsuit, turned out to be false. What followed was a proliferation of sexually explicit deepfake content created by the tool and circulated publicly across X. Among the images were those created from photographs taken of her when she was 14 years old, which were manipulated by users of the platform into graphic sexual content. Saint Clair alleged that rather than stopping the content, xAI retaliated against her by demonetizing her X account after she had the audacity to complain about it. The lawsuit she filed against xAI in New York State Court laid out her allegations in stark terms. The complaint accused xAI of willfully turning a blind eye and even celebrating the sexual exploitation of women and children, and described Grok as a tool that uses artificial intelligence to undress, humiliate, and sexually exploit victims. She sued on 9 causes of action, including negligence, design defect, manufacturing defect, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. On the very same day she filed her lawsuit, xAI countersued her in federal court in Texas, claiming she had violated the company's terms of service. The simultaneous countersuit drew enormous criticism from legal observers and the public alike. The sight of a technology company filing legal action against a woman who had just accused its product of generating sexually explicit deepfakes of her as a child on the same day she filed her complaint was widely interpreted as a deliberate and aggressive attempt at intimidation. It also raised uncomfortable questions about what it means to seek accountability against a company whose founder is simultaneously the opposing party in your child custody case. The final and perhaps most unexpected turn in this entire story came in January 2026. Saint Clair posted a statement on X responding to a user who had challenged her on her long history of anti-transgender commentary. In that statement, she expressed significant personal guilt over the role she had played in spreading harmful content targeting the transgender community, and said she had been working privately to educate herself and advocate for people she had previously hurt with her words and her platform. She specifically named Vivian Wilson, Musk's transgender daughter, and acknowledged the real harm that her past work had contributed to. Musk responded on January 12, 2026, by announcing on X that he would be filing for full custody of their son that same day, framing his stated reason as concern that her statements implied she might attempt to transition their 1-year-old child. Saint Clair and her supporters rejected that characterization entirely, arguing that nothing in her apology had come close to implying any such intention. What made the moment particularly significant beyond the immediate legal threat was the subtext running beneath it. Musk's custody filing represented the first time he had ever directly and publicly acknowledged Romulus as a son, and that acknowledgement arrived not as an act of connection or care, but as an act of legal aggression, triggered by Saint Clair stepping away from political and ideological positions he had long been associated with. The irony threaded through every layer of this story is genuinely difficult to overstate. A woman who built a substantial public career partly on content that mocked and dismissed transgender identity ended up in a deeply personal and legal conflict that ultimately compelled her to publicly repudiate that very ideology. A woman who endorsed the most powerful political and business figures of her era found herself selling a car on a sidewalk because one of those figures allegedly cut financial support to their shared infant. A woman who shaped her entire brand around conservative values and strong opinions discovered what it actually cost to hold a position against someone who has more money, more lawyers, more platforms, and more leverage than almost anyone else alive. Whether Saint Clair's public shift on transgender issues was entirely genuine or partly shaped by the circumstances of her situation is something that observers continue to debate, and it is a fair debate to have. What is not debatable is that the shift happened, that it is documented across public posts and media interviews, and that it came at a price she had not fully anticipated when she first decided to speak the truth out loud on Valentine's Day, 2025. What Ashley Saint Clair confirmed through court filings, detailed media interviews, lawsuit complaints filed in multiple jurisdictions, and her own public statements was a coherent and troubling picture of how things work when you enter Elon Musk's orbit in the way that she did. There is a designated point of contact who handles these situations. There is a financial arrangement with specific dollar figures attached that is presented not as unusual, but as the standard outcome. There is a clear expectation that the arrangement will be accepted silently because it has been accepted before. And when someone refuses to accept it, there are consequences that reach into every corner of her life. Financial, professional, legal, and in Saint Clair's case, technological in ways that were almost impossible to anticipate. The story she told was never really just about one relationship or one child. It was about a system built around power and silence, and about what it actually costs a person to step outside of it.